Hello, friends. Welcome to the class from California. I wanted to start this morning with going back to an earlier theme with respect to the manifestations that will come down in the future. We're going to have another reference to that in the class today, but this is a letter from Shoghi Effendi written on his behalf. And it says the following. It says, after Baha'u'llah, many prophets will no doubt appear, but they will be under his shadow. Now, we've had reference to that with the forward to God passes by, and also previously with one of the quotes from Abdu'l-Baha. Although they may abrogate the laws of this dispensation in accordance with the needs and requirements of the age in which they appear, they nevertheless draw their spiritual force from this mighty revelation. The faith of Baha'u'llah constitutes indeed the stage of maturity in the development of mankind. His appearance has released such spiritual forces, which will continue to animate for many long years to come the world in its development. Whatever progress may be achieved in later ages after the unification of the whole human race is achieved will be but improvement in the machinery of the world, for the machinery itself has been already created by Baha'u'llah. The task of continually improving and perfecting this machinery is one which later prophets will be called upon to achieve. They will thus move and work within the orbit of the Baha'i cycle. You can find this in Directives of the Guardian, page 61. Now we're going to go back to our study of the dispensation. But before going into the text again, I wanted to review a couple of references to the dispensation in Letters of the Guardian and one reference of Rihakano. Let us see if I can bring this up for you. Yeah, so now you should be seeing this. Do you see the importance of the dispensation of Baha'u'llah and its study? Shoghi Effendi was also pleased to learn of the response which his last general communication, dispensation of Baha'u'llah, addressed to the friends in the West, has awakened in your community. It is his hope that the believers will, through their careful and continued study of this important communication, acquire a new vision of the cause and will be stimulated to redouble their efforts for the expansion and consolidation of their work for the faith. Again, he says, as to the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, it also constitutes an invaluable supplement to the aforementioned tablets. And he'd been referring to the Book of the Covenant and the Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Baha. These two tremendous documents, and he calls this an invaluable supplement, not to be dispensed with, friends. Then we have Rihakano from the Priceless Pearl, where she says, the weighty treatise known as the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah, written in 1934, burst upon the Baha'is like a blinding white light. I remember when I first read it, I had the most extraordinary feeling, as if the whole universe had suddenly expanded around me. And I was looking out into its dazzling star-filled immensity. All the frontiers of our understanding flew outwards. The glory of this cause and the true station of its central figures were revealed to us, and we were never the same again. One would have thought that the stunning impact of this one communication from the Guardian would kill puniness of soul forever. However, Shoghi Effendi felt in his inmost heart about his other writings. I know from his remarks that he considered he had said all he had to say in many ways in the dispensation. Now, he knew that this is the repository of his review of the essential verities of the Baha'i revelation, the Baha'i faith. We're skimming the surface of it, so to speak, in these classes and the consideration that we're giving to it now. I want to just come back and see you again here. Okay, friends, now we're going to go on to the continuation of our study. First, one other letter from the Guardian that I had here that I thought would be interesting to you. It says, Shoghi Effendi on his written on his behalf, what the original state of the universe no one as yet knows was. No one as yet knows. But we believe God is a spiritual being and did create it. How, we do not know. We will have experience of God's Spirit through his prophets in the next world. But God is too great for us to know without this intermediary. The prophets know God, but how is more than our human minds can grasp. Another letter of the Guardian, this from Messages to Alaska, page 70. We find God only through the intermediary of his prophet. We see the perfection of God in his prophets. Time and space are physical things. God, the creator, is not a place as we conceive of place in physical terms. God is the infinite essence, the creator. We cannot picture him or his state, but if we did, we would be his equals, not his creatures. God is never flesh, but mirrored in the attributes of his prophets, we see his divine characteristics and perfections. All right, friends, now let's see. I'm looking for, where's the, no, this is a repetition of what I already have. I'm trying to find another document for you. Okay, now, can you see this? Great, is the power. That's where we are now. So we're taking up our reading of God, of the dispensation, paragraph 44, and we're going on from there. Friends, I've broken down the paragraphs as they appear in the book. Where there's a paragraph break, there's an indentation here, and otherwise it's just sentence by sentence to help parse this out so that we can take a careful look at each sentence, consider its contents. So let's begin here. It should also be borne in mind that great as is the power manifested by this revelation, and however vast the range of the dispensation its author has inaugurated, it emphatically repudiates the claim to be regarded as the final revelation of God's will and purpose for mankind. To hold such a conception of its character and functions would be tantamount to a betrayal of its cause and a denial of its truth. It must necessarily conflict with the fundamental principle which constitutes the bedrock of Baha'i belief. I hope these are terms we've seen them before. We'll see them again. I hope they're terms that become fixed in our consciousness. The fundamental principle of the cause, the bedrock of Baha'i belief, the principle that religious truth is not absolute but relative, that divine revelation is orderly, continuous, and progressive, and not spasmodic or final. So we ask ourselves, what's divine revelation? It's orderly, continuous, and progressive. Three attributes we want to remember too. Indeed, the categorical rejection by the followers of the faith of Baha'u'llah of the claim to finality which any religious system inaugurated by the prophets of the past may advance is as clear and emphatic as their own refusal to claim that same finality for the revelation with which they stand identified. This is a great stumbling block. We know is the denial of the clergy of previous religions, the emphasis on whatever they can take and interpret or misinterpret to claim finality for their own system, for their own faith. It's become the great stumbling block of people moving forward and of conceiving a proper conception of the whole process of progressive revelation. Quoting from Baha'u'llah, to believe that all revelation is ended, that the portals of divine mercy are closed, that from the day springs of eternal holiness, no sun shall rise again, that the ocean of everlasting bounty is forever stilled, and that out of the tabernacle of ancient glory, the messengers of God have ceased to be made manifest, must constitute in the eyes of every follower of the faith a grave and inexcusable departure from one of its most cherished and fundamental principles. A reference to some of the already quoted utterances of Baha'u'llah and Abdul-Baha will surely suffice to establish, beyond the shadow of a doubt, the truth of this cardinal principle. He returns to a theme which he's mentioned in one of the earlier letters, World Order letters. Might not the following passage of the hidden words be likewise construed as an allegorical allusion to the progressiveness of divine revelation and an admission by its author that the message with which he has been entrusted is not the final and ultimate expression of the will and guidance of the Almighty. Then he quotes for us from the hidden words and the Persian hidden words. O Son of Justice, in the night season, the beauty of the immortal being hath repaired from the emerald height of fidelity unto the Sadratul Muntaha, and wept with such a weeping that the concourse on high and the dwellers of the realms above wailed at his lamenting. Whereupon there was asked, why the wailing and weeping? He made reply as bidden, I waited expectant upon the hill of faithfulness, yet inhaled not from them that dwell on earth the fragrance of fidelity. Then summoned to return I beheld, and lo, certain doves of holiness were sore tried within the claws of the dogs of earth. Thereupon the maid of heaven hastened forth unveiled, and resplendent from her mystic mansion asked of their names. And all were told but one, and when urged, the first letter thereof was uttered, whereupon the dwellers of the celestial chambers rushed forth out of their habitation of glory. And whilst the second letter was pronounced, they fell down, one and all, upon the dust. At that moment, a voice was heard from the inmost shrine, thus far and no farther. Verily, we bear witness to that which they have done and are now doing. Now, Shoghi Effendi has made some further comments about this hidden word. Just give me a chance to. Okay, this is now this is with regard to the first letter, the second letter, and no farther, which Shoghi Effendi is pointing out to us as an indication of a confirmation for Baha'u'llah of the progressiveness of his own revelation. This great name, referred to in the hidden word, is the greatest name. The blessed beauty is intended. What we have today are the meaning of two of the letters of the greatest name. They are B and H. This is translated from a letter in Persian. And then we have a letter from the Guardian dated 27 August 33. He says, concerning your second question, these two letters, the first and the second, refer to the blessed name of the ancient beauty, namely B and H. What is intended by Baha'u'llah is this: that which is latent and enshrined within the inmost reality of these three letters has not been revealed, inasmuch as the world of being still does not possess the capacity and receptiveness to reflect fully the glorious radiance of this divine revelation. Thus, whatever is hidden in the inmost essence of the third letter of his blessed name will gradually be unfolded before the eyes of all men. In another sense, these letters bear witness to the incalculable sufferings borne by the blessed beauty, while the people of the world are acquainted with but a fragment thereof. He confirms in another letter about this refers to the reality of Baha'u'llah. Well, going on with the development of his own theme here, he says in a more explicit language, Baha'u'llah testifies to this truth in one of his tablets revealed in Adrianople. Know verily that the veil hiding our countenance has not been completely lifted. We have revealed ourselves to a degree corresponding to the capacity of the people of our age. Should the ancient beauty be unveiled in the fullness of his glory, mortal eyes would be blinded by the dazzling intensity of his revelation. It's interesting to note, friends, in this previous passage, there's a phrase here, the emerald height of fidelity. He hath repaired from the emerald height of fidelity unto the Sardomata. Further down, he talks about the hill of faithfulness. This in the original language, this is the same term. And Abdu'l-Baha says it's a very high position of faith, and the believers can attain to it, but it's very difficult. And he said more difficult still is to maintain constancy in that position. So we come back down in case we've ever attained it. We come back down again. But curious that this is, and it's referred to in other tablets of Baha'u'llah as well. Emerald height of fidelity, the hill of faithfulness, which only suggests to us how many levels of spiritual consciousness there are in the development and maturity and expansion of the spirit of faith, of our own faith in the revelation. Now in the Surah Sabr, the Surah of Patience, this is very interesting. The Surah Sabr was revealed in the afternoon of the first day of Rizwan, on the very first day of his arrival in the Garden of Rizwan. And in it he thus affirms, God hath sent down his messengers to succeed to Moses and Jesus, and he will continue to do so till the end that hath no end, so that his grace may, from the heaven of divine bounty, be continually vouchsafed to mankind. Sabr is this surah of patience, so-called surah of patience. Is also known that an alternative title to this tablet is the Lohi Ayub, the tablet of Job. And it's said to be equal in length to 1/4 of the Kitab-i-Gan. Adib Tarzadi in the Revelation of Baha'u'llah says with regard to this tablet, in the Surah Sab, Baha'u'llah extols the station of Vahid in words no pen can befittingly describe. He pays glowing tribute to the staunchness of his faith and the loftiness of his vision, declares that he had remained faithful to the covenant of God and affirms that he had fulfilled his pledge to his Lord. In this tablet, Baha'u'llah rejects the man-made doctrine of the finality of religion, explains the meaning of seal of the prophets, upholds the principle of the continuity of divine revelation, and states that God will send his manifestations till the end that has no end, as quoted here. Yes, it would be interesting to see fuller translation of these various passages. And finally, Baha'u'llah's statement that I am not apprehensive for my own self. Baha'u'llah still more explicitly declares, my fears are for him who will be sent down unto you after me, him who will be invested with great sovereignty and mighty dominion. He again writes in the Surat al-Haykal, by those words which I've revealed, myself is not intended, but rather he who will come down, who will come after me. To it is witness God, the all-knowing. Deal not with him as ye have dealt with me. Friends, I think there's these passages quite parallel to this quoted in God Passes By as well, referring to the master, the succession of the master. Interesting to see here he says, him who will be sent down unto you after me. Abdullah being already there serving him, had similar phrases, Baha'u'llah concerned about what would happen to in the master with his ministry. But this one he is identifying definitely with the next manifestation of God. And finally, he draws another evidence from the writings of the Bab. In a more circumstantial passage, the Bab upholds the same truth in his writings. It is clear and evident, he writes in the Persian Bayan, that the object of all preceding dispensations has been to pave the way for the advent of Muhammad, the apostle of God. These, including the Mohammedan dispensation, have had in their turn as their objective the revelation proclaimed by the Qaim, The purpose underlying this revelation, as well as those that preceded it, has in like manner been to announce the advent of the faith of him whom God shall make manifest. And this faith, the faith of him whom God will make manifest, in its turn, together with all the revelations gone before it, have as their object the manifestation destined to succeed it. And the latter, no less than all the revelations preceding it, prepare the way for the revelation which is yet to follow. The process of the rise and setting of the Sun of Truth will thus indefinitely continue, a process that has had no beginning and will have no end. Friends, you know, we saw this reference here to the seal of the prophets. And of course, the main objective of the mainstream Muslims all over the world is that this title, Seal of the Prophets, closes the way for any further manifestations of God to appear. We want to know the arguments of this Baha'u'llah in the Igan. You know, he cites that the Jews have said that the hand of God is closed, the revelations won't come anymore, and so on. And he points to the absurdity of this and gives some arguments there, which also apply then to the seal of the prophets. The seal of the prophets, he says, definitely reveals the glory of this day, the period, the prophetic cycle of prophecy, the Adamic cycle that we've seen mentioned here in the passages that we've been studying, has come to an end. And now we have the full manifestation of the day of God. So he said, in a sense, that the seal of the prophets is a terrific announcement as to what's going to come after it. And there are references, of course, throughout the Quran to the coming of the All-Merciful and the end of time, the fulfillment, the prophecies of which were fulfilled with Baha'u'llah when he declares himself to be the manifestation of the All-Merciful in the Rizwan Gardens, so on. So that's very important to understand. Finally, we have know of a certainty. Baha'u'llah explains in this connection that in every dispensation the light of divine revelation hath been vouchsafed to men in direct proportion to their spiritual capacity. Consider the sun, how feeble its rays the moment it appeareth above the horizon, how gradually its warmth and potency increase as it approaches its zenith. Meanwhile, all created things, enabling all created things to adapt themselves to the growing intensity of its light, how steadily it declineth until it reacheth its setting point. Were it all of a sudden to manifest the energies latent within it, it would no doubt cause injury to all created things. In like manner, if the Sun of Truth were suddenly to reveal at the earliest stages of its manifestation the full measure of the potencies which the providence of the Almighty hath bestowed upon it, the earth of human understanding would waste away and be consumed, for men's hearts would neither sustain the intensity of its revelation, nor be able to mirror forth the radiance of its light. Dismayed and overpowered, they would cease to exist. Again, we've read so many passages about the latent energies and force of the revelation acting on mankind. And we see in the writings references to the coming suffering that mankind is going to go through, preliminary to being able to mirror this radiance in a sufficient way as to attract the whole body of mankind. in order to carry the faith forward, the community, Baha'i community everywhere, and particularly in the United States, is going to have to suffer directly from the chaotic processes that are beginning to be manifest quite clearly now in our present situation. We want to always move the friends towards an understanding, particularly in any of our public statements or our interaction with the internet, with the social media. We want to be sure that we uphold the international standards of the faith as the reason that we don't enter into discussion of the politics. I think I mentioned last week about the world order of Baha'u'llah, Shoghi Effendi has indicated will be built on the ashes of the old world order. Now, if we're going to build it on ashes, we don't want to worry too much about maintaining the edifice or fixing it or correcting it in some way, so that national policies are not leading towards the goal that God has in mind. And while we serve and try to benefit everyone around us and advance their well-being, at the same time, we don't immerse ourselves in conflicts of political parties. This kind of disputes will destroy us, the Guardian said. We must be very careful. So we have to uphold the integrity of the Baha'i teachings and the truths that have been revealed to us by Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and then interpreted by Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the faith. Someone has asked the question about the infallibility, relating to the infallibility of Shoghi Effendi. He is infallible in his assigned duties in the Will and Testament. As he's on the one hand, the interpreter, infallible interpretation of the holy texts. He can say what the holy texts mean. And he's the only one that can say that. And then beyond that, he can act for the protection of the faith. And he said he's guided in that. He's guided in the promotion of the teachings of the cause, in the protection of the faith. He disclaims any infallibility in regard to scientific subjects or economy or any of the other sorts. He has opinions and views about it, but they're not necessarily to be taken as infallible. His view of the unfolding stages of history, or he himself has noted, he thought that the Second World War was probably the calamity that would bring us all around. And later in his own messages, he says that it wasn't severe enough and that there'll have to be another round. He refers to this ongoing process. So I think we need to, look at the letters of the Guardian where he describes the infallibility that's been assigned to him and distinguish between that and personal advice or something of the sort that he might offer along the way. Coming back to the text of the dispensation, in the light of these clear and conclusive statements, it is our clear duty to make it indubitably evident to every seeker after truth that from the beginning that hath no beginning, the prophets of the one, the unknowable God, including Baha'u'llah, himself, have all as the channels of God's grace, as the exponents of his unity, as the mirrors of his light and the revealers of his purpose, been commissioned to unfold to mankind an ever-increasing measure of his truth, of his inscrutable will and divine guidance, and will continue to the end that hath no end to vouchsafe still fuller and mightier revelations of his limitless power and glory. Succinctly summarized the whole presentation he's been making here, the arguments that he's cited and so on. This is a clear summary of it. And although it may not seem important with the minimum attention that people are giving to religion and its role, or a negative view that they may have of it, hearing the Baha'i explanation about its continuity will oftentimes renew people's faith and understanding. And they see it in a new way, and then it fits. It seems to have come of age, so to speak, what the Baha'is are saying, what Baha'u'llah has said. We shouldn't hide it. I mean, these religions are so closely knit together. Each one has prophesied the coming revelation after it, and it's also confirmed the previous revelations. The holy books are not disconnected, they're all connected together. And Baha'u'llah is the one who has come and pointed this out with such emphasis and provided the proofs that you read in the Book of Certitude. So this principle of the oneness of religion, of a singular divine process taking place in the world since the appearance of Adam on, and presumably having taken place in universal cycles prior to the appearance of Adam, is something that we want to continually emphasize and glorify. Finally, at the end of this first section of the 4 sections of the dispensation, this first section on Baha'u'llah, we have this final paragraph and the choice of the following passages from a prayer revealed by Baha'u'llah. We might well ponder in our hearts the following passages from a prayer revealed by Baha'u'llah, which strikingly affirm and are a further evidence of the reality of the great and essential truth lying at the very core of his message to mankind. Again, see how he's characterized the progressiveness of revelation? The great and essential truth lying at the very core of his message to mankind. Separating Baha'u'llah from all the messages of the past weakens our presentation of him. It's only strengthened to see it as part of the grand scheme, God's redemptive scheme for mankind, as set forth in the Kitab-i-Gan. Praise be to thee, O Lord my God, for the wondrous revelations of thine inscrutable decree and the manifold woes and trials thou hast destined for myself. At one time thou didst deliver me into the hands of Nimrod. At another, thou hast allowed Pharaoh's rod to persecute me. Thou alone canst estimate through thine all-encompassing knowledge and the operation of thy will the incalculable afflictions I have suffered at their hands. Again, thou didst cast me into the prison cell of the ungodly for no reason except that I was moved to whisper into the ears of the well-favored denizens of thy kingdom an intimation of the vision with which thou hadst through thy knowledge inspired me and revealed to me its meaning through the potency of thy might. And again thou didst decree that I be beheaded by the sword of the infidel. Again I was crucified for having unveiled to men's eyes the hidden gems of thy glorious unity, for having revealed to them the wondrous signs of thy sovereign and everlasting power. How bitter the humiliation heaped upon me in a subsequent age on the plain of Karbala. How lonely did I feel amidst thy people. To what state of helplessness I was reduced in that land. Unsatisfied with such indignities, my persecutors decapitated me, and carrying aloft my head from land to land, paraded it before the gaze of the unbelieving multitude, and deposited it on the seats of the perverse and faithless. In a later age, I was suspended, and my breast was made a target to the darts of the malicious cruelty of my foes. My limbs were riddled with bullets, and my body was torn asunder. Finally, behold how in this day my treacherous enemies have leagued themselves against me and are continually plotting to instill the venom of hate and malice into the souls of thy servants. With all their might, they're scheming to accomplish their purpose. Grievous as is my plight, O God, my well-beloved, I render thanks unto thee, and my spirit is grateful for whatsoever hath befallen me in the path of thy good pleasure. I am well pleased with that which thou didst ordain for me, and welcome, however calamitous, the pains and sorrows I am made to suffer. Mysterious passage, very mysterious passage. Baha'u'llah here identifying himself with the whole scheme of appearance of prophets before him. Now we're going to move backward a little bit to the question about my fears are not for him, but my fears, and we'll get to the clarification of and identity of these various parts of this tablet. But there's a quote I wanted to bring to your attention from Shoghi Effendi. My fears are, this is related to that passage. First of all, we should understand that the Surat al-Haykal exists in three separate forms. The first revealed in Adrianople for the benefit of the Babis. Two later versions were revealed, revised, re-revealed in Akka. Shoghi Effendi is citing from the second version of the Haykal. Baha'u'llah did not include this paragraph in the third version of the Haykal, which he himself edited for publication in India. The English translation of the Haykal, which appears in the summons of the Lord of Hosts, is based on the third version. Then we have quotes here. As to the meaning of the question, my fears are for him who will be sent down unto you after me. This refers to the manifestation who is to come after 1,000 or more years, who, like all previous messengers of God, will be subjected to persecutions, but will eventually triumph over them. For men of ill will have been and will always continue to be in this world, unless mankind reaches a state of complete and absolute perfection, a condition which is not only improbable, but actually impossible to attain. The fundamental difference, however, between this dispensation and all previous ones is this, that in this revelation, the possibility of permanent schism between the followers of the prophet has been prevented through the direct and explicit instructions provided for the necessary instruments designed to maintain the organic unity of the body of the faithful. Veiled in inscrutable mystery is the relationship between the future manifestation of God and the house of justice existing at that time. So we can't really come back to that. Are you with me again here? Let's see. Yes, okay. Another tablet, this is with the relation to this previous one about progressive revelation, progressive development of the light of the revelation, comes from the Selections of Abdul Baha, page 33. He says, "This is but the beginning of the dawn, and the heat of the rising orb of truth is not yet at the fullness of its power. Once the sun hath mounted to high noon, its fires will burn so hot as to stir even the creeping things beneath the earth. And although it is not for them to behold the light, yet will they all be set in frenzied motion by the impact of the heat." Again, we have progressive revelation in the whole of the cycle, the progressive revelation of the Adamic cycle, and now we have it also in the Baha'i cycle through the progressive nature in the unfoldment of the energies inherent in any single revelation. So we're in the stages now of the gradual increase in the manifestation of the forces. They've not lessened in any way. Our connection with them, our interaction with them, our reflection of them may vary from time to time, depending on our own spiritual state. But those energies, the force, the driving, motivating force of the revelation is not lessened because we're in this latter, now this ongoing period of the formative age of the faith. So we want to remember that and learn how to discipline ourselves and draw on the power of divine confirmations flowing from the revelation, through the revelation, to the body of the believers. Now we come back to this passage, which is from the Surah Dam, the tablet of blood. It was revealed by Baha'u'llah in Adrianople for Nabil Azam, this one that quotes the progressive character of the inner reality of Baha'u'llah having been the same inner reality of these previous manifestations. Adib Darzadeh summarizes this tablet. He says, "This tablet in Arabic is addressed to Nabil Azam and contains many celebrated passages concerning the greatness of his revelation, as well as counsels and exhortations to Nabil. Apparently, it was revealed at a time when Nabil, as instructed by Baha'u'llah, had returned to Persia after attaining his presence in Adrianople. In this tablet, Baha'u'llah directs Nabil to travel throughout the land, meet the sincere souls among the community, and rend asunder the grievous veils that have hindered them from recognizing the countenance of glory." And of course, that refers to the erroneous teaching spread by the followers of Azal that he was the promised manifestation, countering Baha'u'llah's proclamation of his own mission at that time and causing the crisis, the days of stress in Adrianople. Now, this prayer, which is from that tablet, has been elucidated. The identifications in it have been elucidated and referred to in several letters to individuals by the guardian. Here's one to the there's an earlier one. He says, "The prophets regarded as one and the same person include the lesser prophets as well, and not merely those who bring a book. The station is different, but they are prophets, and their nature thus different from that of ours. So concerning your question relative to the names of the prophets referred to in the dispensation, they are as follows." Take note of these if you want to then find them in this passage. Abraham, Moses, Joseph, John the Baptist, Jesus the Christ, Imam Hussein, son of Ali, who was the legitimate heir of Muhammad, and the Bab, and Baha'u'llah. Shoghi Effendi, 14 August 1934. Then again, in a letter written to the National Assembly of the United States and Canada in 1936, and cited in the U.S. Baha'i News, number 87, he says, as to the list of the prophets with whom Baha'u'llah identified himself in the passage found on pages 26 and 27, their names are as follows. And again, Abraham, Moses, Joseph, John the Baptist, Jesus, Imam Hussein, on whom Baha'u'llah has conferred an exceptionally exalted station, and the Bab. Now, I cite this one because of the characterization of the Imam Hussein as interpreted by Shoghi Effendi, on whom Baha'u'llah has conferred an exceptionally exalted station. Quite interesting that the Imam Hussein, Baha'u'llah claims to be the return of the Imam Hussein, and this is also mentioned in the Bab's writings. This is extraordinary, no? He's the third Imam, and has a very exalted station. Baha'u'llah has revealed a long tablet of visitation for the Imam Hussein, which is not yet available in an English translation. So you found that Pharaoh's rod to persecute me, let's see, Nimrod, going back further, thou didst deliver me into the hands of Nimrod. Here, this Baha'u'llah is identifying himself with Abraham. The Nimrod referred to in this verse is both Jewish and is in both Jewish and Islamic traditions. He's a king who persecuted Abraham and whose name became symbolic of great pride. This is from a note from the Kitab-i Aqdas. Thou hast allowed Pharaoh's rod to persecute me. Here we're talking about Moses. Thou didst cast me into the prison cell of the ungodly. That's the one reference to Joseph. Thou hast beheaded me by the sword of the infidel, refers here to John the Baptist. I was crucified for having unveiled to men's eyes the hidden gems of thy glorious unity. He's here identifying with Jesus. How bitter the humiliations heaped upon me in a subsequent age on the plain of Karbala. This, of course, is referring to the Imam Hussein. In a later age, I was suspended and my breast was made a target to the darts of the malicious cruelty of my foes. Here, of course, Baha'u'llah is identifying himself with the Bab, who he refers to as my own previous revelation. Behold how in this day my treacherous enemies have leagued themselves against me and are continually plotting to instill the venom of hate and malice into the souls of these servants. That terminates this section, this first and longest section on Baha'u'llah and on the essential verities related to his station and on a clarification of his relationship to the source of all sources, the divinity and Almighty God himself. All right, friends, let's go to the notes we have here in the chat. Let's see if we can do that. One of them. We've obviously already referred to the nature of the infallibility of the guardians. I think we can Let's see, people are supposed to preface their things with a question. Please explain why the next manifestation of God will face opposition, since the House of Justice is infallible and can clearly identify the next prophet. Well, the question of infallibility relating to it, identifying the future manifestation of God, it seems fairly clear, but one doesn't know. If the House of Justice recognizes the next manifestation, will the people then turn away from the House, or will they turn to the new manifestation? Obviously, there's going to be a period of confusion there until everything settles down. And one can only imagine at that time, because of the power of the cause and the position of the House of Justice, how complicated that might be. The question about intensity of the fully unveiled could cause blindness and cease to exist. Could these be descriptions to reference of people not accepting the teachings, or to something else? I think we can say clearly it would be a description of something like that or something else. That gives us a nice broad basis for not interpreting that particular passage. I'm so intrigued by the progressive impact of the revelation on the souls of humanity. There seems to be a massive awakening among spiritually inclined souls, however, don't have trust. Well, we're at the beginning of, I think we're at the beginning of some changes. You know, there's always a proportion of souls that are referred to by the guardian as waiting souls, souls that are prepared to accept the faith if they hear it. And of course, as we've said before, it depends on us telling them. And to some degree, I think it depends on us imploring Baha'u'llah, begging Baha'u'llah to allow us to become instruments to find these waiting souls and bring them to the cause, so that we have the strength of their participation amongst us. The well-grounded souls who accept the cause, who in its fullness as best they can. Shoghi Effendi said, are much more important for the cause than a vast amount of lukewarm souls who may have only partially identified themselves with the faith. So we need these other powerful pillars in the cause, and we've been promised in the Haykal that they will appear and champion the cause in the future. Let us all be alert, and God protect us, Baha'u'llah protect us, that we can identify them when we run into them and not say, oh, this one's not going to be interested. We need to announce the faith to every waiting soul here. It's a question about who do we consider to be minor prophets? Well, there are all the prophets that don't bring a book, even though they have chapters in the Old Testament. But for us, unless they bring laws, a new law system, they're not prophets endowed with constancy. So they come under the shadow of the prophets that have brought laws and general teachings, and they further elaborate them. But they do have the station of prophets. They're different in their nature from human beings, as was stated in one of the things we quoted tonight. I don't know. There's a question here about the Josephina references in the writings. I mean, that doesn't explain enough to me to know what that might be a reference to. Sorry. Thank you, dear. So, friends, this is the end of our hour again. It's been a joy to be with you, and I wish I could see all your shining faces. But I must say, I sit here feeling that you're there, and I look forward to joining you again next week, God willing.